My name is Mark Brett. I'm currently working with the newly named Ministry of Housing, Community and Local Government. So DCLG disappeared a couple of Mondays ago. It's now the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, at the same time that social care was shifted across to the Department of Health. I've been working on various parts of information security and cyber for local government for such a long time. At the minute, what we're doing is planning for the National Cybersecurity Programme for next year. So what I want to talk to you about today is what we've been doing over the last year or so. But I do have to recall just very quickly what the last speaker was saying about how long they've been working in data protection. I wonder if anybody else in the room can actually remember the multi-page paper document that we filled in for the Data Protection Act 1984 when we first did it. Yeah. Little coloured red leaflets, a little booklet and a little blue booklet, and it was a multi-page paper document that you had to fill in for every council system at the time. You know, it was quite amazing. So we've come a long way. But what I want to talk today about is some of the resilience aspects and how we need to embed cyber resilience into the councils and local authority organisations and other public sector bodies, but from a viewpoint of availability of information. Because some of you will know that with information assurance we've got three components: CIA, which is confidentiality, keeping information safe; integrity, which is the really important one about keeping information accurate; and of course availability. And we all tend to get hung up on the aspects of confidentiality, things like encryption, access control, but we often forget about making sure that the systems are actually available. And a number of things can affect availability, whether it's network coverage, power failures. It could be not being able to get into the building. There could be a picket line out the front and some of the systems are in a situation where they need some maintenance and therefore the systems can't be obtained. So we have to think about resilience and all of its different guises. The legislation will be coming in. We've heard all of this. The reason that it's got this sort of context is this is what we've been talking about over the last year, 18 months. So all the stuff I'm showing you and telling you about today is all available on the web, and these frameworks are really to help you with trying to get the messaging into different parts of the council. Data sets. One of the things that seems to be getting a lot of pushback on when I go around various organisations doing CSIRO training as well and information asset owner training in a different role is, do you all now have information asset registers? Because I have been finding up until this time last year that a lot of councils didn't have information asset registers, and I found that really quite surprising. And again, is everybody sort of using privacy impact assessments now as well? Yeah, well again, that's very good. One of the documents we've got which supports a lot of these things, have you all come across the Local Government Data Handling Guidelines? Is that a document that people are familiar with? Because that was published last February, and at the moment we're authoring a latest version of that. So by April there'll be a new version, version 5, which will be published. So it's an evolving document, but that will support all of this stuff and have a lot more in it around cyber security and the need to undertake cyber work.
Sorry, what was the name of the document?
It's the Local Public Services Data Handling Guidelines. The first edition was published in 2008 after the HMRC discs went missing by the LGA, and that's been kept going since, and it's gone through various iterations through the PSN, and there's a copy on gov.uk, but the last version, current one is version 4, that was launched last February, and version 5 is being worked on at the moment. Because that document talks about people, policies, processes and procedures, places. So it sort of gives a rounded document that explains everything. I'll just try and make sure that we've got any of the key points on here because I don't want to just read off the slides. Yeah, I mean, as I said, a lot of these slides will be useful for you as an aid memoir to use internally, because you're very welcome to recycle these, by the way. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The leadership team, how to actually get the stuff in and showing the different roles and responsibilities within the council. And we've also got a large knowledge bank. Some of you would have heard of iNetwork, which is the partnership up in the northwest, and they have what used to be the locally government standards body that's now called iStand UK. Well, there's a web link at the end of this presentation, but we've actually got 300 and odd documents that are all linked out around this particular framework that I'm showing you now. So there's an awful lot of knowledge and information that you can go back and start using. Chief Executive. Absolutely critical that the Chief Executive is aware of the GDPR and the cyber stuff. There's going to be a lot of work going on over the next few months. There are 4 regional workshops coming up around cyber security and resilience planning. And also it's quite possible that during next year there will be training available for Chief Executives and other executive leaders around cyber resilience and cyber protection. So in a way, I'm not apologising for the fact that this is to do with cyber security, but as you see, it does really interleave with all the GDPR stuff. So it's not trying to shoehorn something into the side of today's conference that's not relevant. It is actually saying, look, in order to make yourself secure, everything is about following the data. It's really important to know where your data flows are. And especially if you're starting to put things out in the cloud and things like that. The cloud's absolutely fine. Cloud services are secure, they're fit for purpose, but it is really important that the senior leaders, including the CIRO and the Chief Executive, understand their responsibilities around this. Solis is doing a lot of work at the moment to start on this agenda, and there is a local government stakeholders group for cyber security that Solis are represented on. So Chief Executives are starting to be told about cyber security and GDPR and some of the issues that surround it. The next group are the business unit leaders. That's the service managers, the people that sit on the corporate directors, the various service heads. It's really important that they understand things about risk appetite and how that works, because you're going to have to make decisions that are based on information risk, and it's very difficult with all the cuts and things that are going on to know where to prioritise that. So again, apart from the information asset registers and privacy impact assessments, the one thing I'm not seeing an awful lot of work going on in various councils on is actually around articulating risk appetite. So do you have formally articulated risk appetites? Right, because if you don't, I would suggest to you that the risk appetite is actually the epicentre. Now, some of you in the room that have got a slightly technical background will be familiar with the Public Services Network. And some of you will know that we always have to put in, every council submits a code of connection once a year, in the same way that you do an IG toolkit submission. But you also, as part of that compliance process, have to have what's known as an IT health check done, which is a penetration test. And when that comes back, what we have to do is make sure that there are no risks identified on that test that are medium and above. And the reason for that is the risk appetite that's been set on the Public Services Network is medium, which is known as cautious. And if you want to find out about risk appetites, the main document that talks about all of that is the Treasury Orange Book. Now, the Treasury Orange Book document is about financial risk, but information risk is predicated off of that, and that document has not been changed since 2005. You'll also find a couple of other documents that talk around it. There's the Green Book and some practitioner documents. But if you download the Local Public Services Data Handling Guidelines, you'll find in there that there's all the references around risk appetite and the Orange Book. So once you've got the risk appetite set up, and again, those of you that have looked at the Government Protective Marking Scheme and managing information risk, the official level of managing government information, again, is set at medium. So that means that when you work out your information risk appetite, you should also have some various risks that are in the Corporate Information Risk Register. You can then decide how much you need to invest on an information risk programme to look after information security under GDPR and to put towards cyber security. What you mustn't forget about information risk, it's actually about how much financial and reputational loss your organisation is prepared to bear. Now when you ask that question to CIROs and others, they always say, well, we don't want to lose anything. And then we have to say, but hang on a minute, you can't afford the level of security you need to not be able to lose anything. So what I'm trying to say to you is, if you've got to triage things, what you need to do is actually to identify your really critical information assets in the Information Asset Register, the big data sets that you've got privacy impact assessments for, and then do the risk assessment against them, and that's where you have to justify to put the investment. Now, I know I'm not keeping to the slides completely, but these are some really interesting points, because this stuff is all on the web and you can download it afterwards and you can work through this as a framework when you get back. But some of the other key things that you really need to take into account for cyber resilience is the fact that you need business continuity plans, which means you need to decide which are your critical systems that you need to recover. And the other thing that's very important, and one of the key takeaways around the whole of GDPR today, is that actually you need to have a complete project and program plan about what you are going to do about GDPR in your business, in your organisation when you go back. Because as my esteemed colleague Mr. Pounder will tell you afterwards in the session after this one, if you haven't got records of having done something, what's the Information Commissioner going to assume? You haven't done it. So if you've got a project plan and you can actually evidence that you're doing things as you go along, and you've told the chief executive and you've informed the service managers and all the other people, then at least if you haven't done something, you have a plan to say you're actually doing it at the moment, and you can work through it in steps and stages. So information asset registers, privacy impact assessments, risk appetite articulated, program of work with governance. Again, the data handling guidelines talk about having a corporate information governance group which has all the people around the table that can help you drive this through. So, service managers. We've also got the executive team including HR. Please don't forget, you can't do this unless HR are involved, because they've got to deal with all the people aspects of GDPR, the responsibility for the training, the induction training, exit interviews, joiners, movers and leavers. That's another one for your list. JML. Well-known phrase in certain quarters, but not used that often in local government. You've got to keep tabs on your joiners, movers and leavers. What do I mean by movers? Someone moves from one job to another. Do they need the permissions they had yesterday? Why is someone in sales looking at the HR records? Why is someone in finance looking at the HR records? You know, it's things like that. People that had access from previous roles, if they don't need it, take it away. That access control layer is part of the confidentiality. Make sure that's all mapped out and gridded and evidenced. Because if you get a data breach, whether it's malicious, because insider threats that we talk about, insider threats can either be malicious, threat actor, or a mistake, an accident. Disgruntled employee. You know, these things happen. So you need to make sure that you've got all of your access control properly locked down, and you've got records of who's got access to what, why, when and how. That is the responsibility of HR. We've heard about managing suppliers and the procurement contracts. Really important. And please don't forget, make sure that the press, media and PR people, especially those that look after your social media, have trained the senior managers how to respond to a data breach. Because incident management is incredibly important. It's going to become even more important as you move forward. Bad press and media coverage is not good. It's reputational damage. And please don't forget, as you get closer to a local election, your councillors and members are going to be far more concerned about problems around reputational damage than the day after they've just been elected. That's not being flippant saying that. You've got to understand certain things happen in the organisation at certain times of the year and the month. Your threat profile will change at those times. So be aware of all that. It's all part of cyber resilience. A lot of organisations don't have a Chief Information Risk Officer, but our last speaker from Leicester Council was talking about being the risk manager and the data protection manager. This goes back to the risk appetite that I was just speaking about. You do need a clearly written down risk appetite, because that gives you the pivot point on all of your decisions, what matters, where you're going to spend your money and do the investments. Chief Information Officers. Again, it's really important that councils are starting to have heads of IT, Chief Information Officers, Chief Digital Officers. Whoever it is that's responsible for the information flows, they need to understand the risk appetite of the organisation. They need to understand where the information is. But please understand this, that from a data protection viewpoint and from a cyber resilience viewpoint, IT are just the providers of the service. The data, the information and the process belong to the business owners, not to the IT department. So anything that happens in terms of business continuity planning, resilience planning and all the stuff around GDPR, that is a business function. That is not an IT function. That is a really important thing to keep in your mind, because that has been a perennial problem around this for at least the last 10, 15 years. And there's some colleagues in this room that have known me for a long time, and that is a problem. But I think finally and slowly the messages are beginning to get to the chief officer teams. We've had lots of talk about the role of data protection officers, so I'm not going to dwell on that. But again, they've got to have a level of independence. They've got to be able to have the knowledge, skills and experience to do the work as well. The next part of our framework, having looked at the roles, is looking at the culture, threats and opportunities and monitoring and what's important to manage. So as I keep saying to you, what you've got here is effectively 3 sets of framework slides. These you can take back, alter them with pleasure, use them internally. People-centric culture. The best way to embed stuff around GDPR is absolutely to get people to realise there's something in it for them. Most of us know that social engineering is all about benefit, trust and compliance. That's how social engineering works, benefit, trust and compliance. So if you use those principles and reverse engineer it onto your staff around protection of information for data protection, GDPR and cyber, you need to make them and educate them so they understand how to keep their information safe at home. For instance, there's a fantastic website out there called Think You Know. Now that's a child protection website. But on that website is age-related information that's banded to help young people. So, you know, very young people, teenagers, older teenagers. Or in the sort of youth parlance, I do a lot of work with scouting outside, so you've sort of got the Cub Scouts, the Explorers and Venture Scout age, network age groups. So think, tell your staff about how to keep their children safe at home. Loads of stuff's been on BBC Breakfast this morning talking about all the problems around that. There's also another fantastic website called Cyber Aware. Now Cyber Aware is a Home Office website, which again is all about keeping yourself safe at home. You've got things like the Think Privacy campaign on the ICO's website. You've got the Barclays Bank Digital Legals. If you get staff to think about their personal information and how to be safe on Facebook, PayPal, eBay, using Amazon, stuff that matters to them, they will come into the office and hopefully look after the corporate information in the same way. That's already been said in one of the plenaries this morning, but it's so important. Look at the opportunities. Understand who wants to attack your information. Now at the moment the biggest threats out there is serious and organised crime. There is quite a bit of activity going on with foreign intelligence services, but that's nothing new. But the main attack vector for local authorities are serious and organised criminals. They are not looking under a microscope or going around with a telescope looking at your council. They are sending out thousands of emails to hundreds of organisations on a daily basis. It's indiscriminate. What they want are credit card details, identity information. What have councils got? Lots of information about peoples, places and things people do in places. So you've got some very rich data sets in social care, in housing, the council tax, leisure centres, libraries. That's the problem. If something goes wrong in your council, something hits the news, whatever the bad news is, suddenly you're a focus of interest for investigative journalists as well. So you need to think all the time and adapt to how this stuff changes. Phishing, Trojans, malware, internal sabotage. One London borough, a long time ago, won't say who it was or anything, but absolute truth, I was in there doing CSIRO training for them, and I was talking about some of this stuff, and I said, yeah, you wouldn't believe, we put out a waste management contract that's worth quite a few £1,000,000. They actually found one of the committee rooms had been bugged. Truth, actually happened. One of the committee rooms was being bugged because it was a multi-million-pound waste management contract, and their CSIRO told me that. I was shocked, I couldn't believe it. But then, because of the size of the contracts and stuff, they were looking at shared service as well, they're having to have the rooms bug swept. So don't think you've not got people that are interested in your stuff, because they are. I've said about what matters already, talking about level of risk and risk appetite. I'm going to flick through these slides because of time. But don't forget to monitor this stuff as well. Really important. If you don't monitor your incidents and what's going on, you won't have a clue about what's happening. Please keep training records. If you ever have a data breach, one of the first things the ICO is going to ask you for are your training records. It's true. And records of everything. You need records of records. You know, GDPR is going to be the legislation of records and registers. Huge amounts of them. So as I said earlier, if you've got your program plan in place, if something bad happens and you're part way through, you can look the ICO in the eye and say, look, we are doing this. There is a corporate board that with oversight, the program's happening, we haven't finished these registers, but we are starting to do this work. At least they know you're thinking about it, because they're only going to find people that aren't taking this stuff seriously. There will be fines, obviously, but the massive fines will be directed towards organisations that don't care. And if you want to know the sort of things that can happen, go on the ICO's website and look at the page for all the data breaches, because one of the best things about it is they're all matters of public record. I call it the naughty step. Go and read the naughty step, because if you look at some of the things that have happened, it's what happened, what the ICO did about it, how it was fixed, and the undertakings moving forward. That is free, valuable information to help you work out what's important and what you should be monitoring. As I say, the cyber resilience model, when you go to the website with the links, all these things have got loads and loads of resources below them, okay? Now, guess what? I've got 5 minutes left and there's 12 more slides. This framework, again, is there. Go to the website, download it, make use of it, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to skip through these slides, because I don't need to stand here and read off this screen, all right? But all those headings are all good things that you'd expect to be there, because what I want to get you down to is the bit at the end that really matters. The knowledge bank. All the stuff is on a web portal. Now, to find all the good stuff, you go to istanduk.org/cyber resilience, okay? So http:// instead of www, it's just istand.org/cyber resilience. And I'm not sure if we've got the other one. Yes. Now, this is really important. If you've had enough today, we have got 4 workshops coming up. And during these workshops, you will get the opportunity to participate in a 2-hour desktop cyber exercise being run by the National Cyber Security Centre and the Emergency Planning College. Now, if you go on the web, we've sent out, it's on the LGA website, I've put it out through the Warp networks, it's on the SOCSIN website, but the London one's on the 27th of March, 21st of March in Manchester, 27th of February in Bristol, and the 16th of February in Birmingham. But that will give you a forward look on what we're doing with the Cyber Resilience Programme and the opportunity to take part in a 2-hour cyber exercise, because that's the way we've got to go now, about exercising and rehearsing.